Mom, please don't take this the wrong way, but we've decided to keep the graduation dinner to immediate family only, meaning just the people who live in our circle. The words hit me with a dull thud. I stood in my small garden in Virginia, the phone pressed so hard to my ear that it hurt. I watched a hummingbird hover over the lavender I'd planted, its wings moving so fast that they were a blur, much like the last 22 years of my life had been. I was 52 years old. For more than 2 decades, I had been a single mother, defined entirely by what I could provide. I was the night shift nurse who worked 12-hour stretches, my feet swollen and my back aching, just to pay for Elena's elite private schooling. I remembered wearing the same navy blue winter coat for 6 years, even when the lining shredded and the buttons fell off, so that she could have the right designer clothes to fit in with her wealthy friends. I thought I was building her a bridge to a better life. I didn't realize I was building a wall between us. Now, my daughter Elena was graduating from law school. She was marrying Julian, a man from a family of prestigious surgeons and prominent architects. They lived in a world of high ceilings, silent auctions, and polished marble. And suddenly, her mother, the woman with the tired eyes, the faint scent of hospital antiseptic, and a wardrobe full of cotton scrubs, didn't fit the aesthetic of her new life. "I am your mother, Elena," I said. My voice was barely a whisper, a ghost of the strength I usually carried. "I know, Mom," she replied, her tone sharp and impatient, the way one speaks to a slow waiter. "But Julian's parents are hosting at the country club. It's very formal, very exclusive. There's a seating chart and, well, it's just complicated. We'll do a separate lunch, just us, next month, okay?" The line went dead before I could say a word. I stood there in the silence of my garden, looking down at my hands. They were stained with garden soil and calloused from decades of medical work. I felt a coldness settle in my chest that had nothing to do with the Virginia evening air. I wasn't complicated. I was an embarrassment to the version of herself she was trying to create. To Elena, I was a reminder of a past she wanted to bury, a past of overtime shifts, coupons, and a mother who worked too hard to ever be elegant. That evening, instead of attending the commencement ceremony I had dreamed of for years, I did something I had never done. I dressed in the silk blouse I had bought specifically for her graduation, a soft cream color that cost me a week's groceries, and I went to a small coastal bistro called the Salt Line. I sat at the bar, feeling like a ghost haunting my own life. I stared at my wine glass, the liquid untouched. A woman about my age, sitting 2 seats away, watched me for a long moment. She had silver hair cut into a sharp, stylish bob, and eyes that held a kind of piercing intelligence. "You look like a woman who just realized she's been carrying a heavy backpack for 20 years, only to find out it was filled with stones," she said, her voice steady and warm. I looked at her, startled by her accuracy. "I just found out I'm not immediate family anymore," I told her, the truth finally leaking out of me. The woman, Audrey, didn't offer me a tissue or a sympathetic pat. Instead, she offered me a seat at her table where her husband, David, was waiting. "We're celebrating my first day of retirement," Audrey said with a grin. "And David is terrible at small talk. We could really use a third perspective to keep the night interesting. Will you join us?" I hesitated for a second. Then I said yes, and in that moment, as I picked up my glass and walked to their table, I began the long, painful, but beautiful process of putting that backpack of stones down for good. My name is Catherine Reed. I was 52 then. I am 59 now. I'm telling you this because many women spend their lives believing that their value is tied to how much they sacrifice. We think that if we give everything, our time, our money, our health, we will be loved forever. But I learned the hard way that sacrifice without boundaries isn't love. It's an invitation to be taken advantage of. Over the next few years, Audrey and David became my anchors. They weren't just friends, they were my nearest mirrors. They didn't see Elena's mom or the nurse. They saw Catherine, a woman of intellect, humor, and hidden strength. With their encouragement, I stopped pouring my life savings into Elena's lifestyle demands. I started a small consulting business for home care nursing. I started traveling. I went to the coast of Maine, to the mountains of Colorado, places Elena never had time for. I built a life that was vibrant, loud, and entirely mine. For 5 years, Elena and I had what I called a polite relationship. She would call on Mother's Day, usually from a vacation spot. I would send a card on her birthday. She lived her high society life in her glass house, and I lived mine. I stopped being the person she called when she needed a quick loan or someone to fix her mistakes. I became a busy woman she had to make an appointment to see. It hurt, but for the first time in my life, I could breathe. Then came the rainy Tuesday that changed everything. My phone rang at 11 p.m. It was Elena, but she wasn't the polished lawyer anymore. She was sobbing, the sounds raw and desperate. Julian's law firm had collapsed under a massive ethical scandal involving his parents' architecture firm. Their assets were frozen. The friends at the country club had vanished like smoke. Julian had left for some space, leaving her with a mountain of debt and an empty mansion. "Mom, I'm moving back home. I've lost the house. I have nothing. I need you to take me in. I'll be there tomorrow. I don't have anywhere else to go." I sat in my beautiful, sunlit home, a house I had bought with my own hard-earned success, filled with my own art and my own peace. I looked at the guest room, which I had recently turned into a painting studio where I spent my Saturday mornings. "Elena," I said. My heart didn't race. I didn't feel the old urge to rush out and fix it. "I am so sorry you're going through this, truly, but you cannot move back here." There was a stunned silence on the other end. "What?" she gasped. "You're my mother. You have to help me. It's your job." "I am helping you, Elena," I replied firmly. "I will help you find a studio apartment you can afford. I will help you rewrite your resume. I will even buy you a week of groceries. But I spent 20 years being your safety net, and you rewarded me by hiding me from your life when things were good. I will not let you use my home as a bunker now that your world is falling apart. I have worked too hard for my peace to let your chaos back into my sanctuary." Elena didn't speak to me for 2 years after that call. She was furious, but she had no choice. She had to work a real job. She had to live in a small apartment. She had to learn what it was like to be the one who provides, not just the one who consumes. Last Christmas, for the first time in 7 years, Elena didn't ask me for anything. She didn't call with a crisis. She simply asked if she could come over for dinner. She arrived with a bottle of wine and a sincere, quiet apology. She sat at the table with Audrey, David, and I. She didn't talk about her circle or her aesthetic. She just sat there, looking at me, really looking at me, for the first time. "I didn't realize how much you were worth until I had to earn my own way," she told me, her voice trembling. "I'm sorry, Mom. If you're a mother or anyone who feels like a secondary character in someone else's story, I want you to remember this. Your immediate family are the people who claim you when you have nothing and brag about you when they have everything. Don't be afraid to say no. A mother's love is unconditional, but her presence, her energy, and her home are privileges that must be respected. It is never too late to reclaim your identity. I was 52 when I was uninvited to a dinner. It was the most painful night of my life, but looking back, it was the best thing that ever happened to me, because that was the day I finally invited myself to live. Thank you for listening. If you've ever had to set a hard boundary with someone you love, tell me your story in the comments. I'd love to connect with you. I'll see you in the next story.